Today, we're going to be discussing a few articles from musicnews.com. The first, which is titled, Harry Styles lands UK's most listened to single of 2022. Harry Styles' track, As It Was, has been named the UK's most listened to single of 2022. According to the British Phonographic Industry, or BPI, which analyzed data from the official charts company, Styles' track was streamed 180.9 million times throughout last year and spent 10 consecutive weeks at number 1 on the official UK Top 40 chart. That is amazing. 180.9 million times just in 1 year it was streamed. That is quite the feat. It goes on to say, the rest of the top 10 was made of fellow British artists, and the BPI's Leon Nivelle hailed as its huge success from the UK music industry, saying, quote, at a time when streaming has created unprecedented competition coming from every corner of the globe, it is astonishing that in 2022, British artists were involved in all the top 10 calendar years' biggest hits in the UK. This outstanding achievement is a testament to the rich music taste that continues to emerge from across the UK's nations and regions, fueled by the passion, investment, and skills of UK record labels. And not just record labels, I would also say the artists as well coming through there, but record labels are also a big deal on that. It also mentions who the number 2 spot was, and the number 3rd and the 5th, which surprising enough, or not surprising enough, depending on how much you know, it's Ed Sheeran. He took number 2, number 3, number 5 with his hits Bad Habits, surprise, surprise, Peru, and then his 5th one was Shivers. So this just shows some of the great music that's coming out of UK right now, and some of the amazing streaming success they've been having. I'm actually surprised Harry Styles has beaten Ed Sheeran for the number 1 spot, but I mean the numbers don't lie, so that is quite amazing. So that's all we'll talk about, just mentioning Harry Styles' article, because we have some more to go through. And I mean, that article is pretty self-explanatory. Basically, it's just, mentioning that he's the number 1 most listened to single of 2022 on the UK's charts. And Ed Sheeran was, closely behind with quite a few of his singles. We could go through every single one, but that will be better for a different type of setting. So, moving on, we are going to read this article about Fall Out Boy. And I remember when I was in high school, Fall Out Boy was like a band that had some success, but I claimed that, I liked them and I got a lot of hate for it. And then a couple years after I graduated high school, they had a big emergence again, and everyone loved Fall Out Boy, and it was just kind of humorous that, only a couple years later, now everyone that seemed to hate Fall Out Boy now loved them. So, anyways, so this article says Fall Out Boy continue to tease new music with cryptic letter. Fall Out Boy are continuing to tease new music. The Sugar We're Going Down hitmakers, whose most recent album was 2018's Mania, have promised fans, quote, more than a gold watch, end of quote, is coming next year. In an email sent to fans entitled A Homeboy's Life, they cryptically pondered, here are finishing another spin around the sun. a cosmic twirl, trying to get free of everything we're supposed to be. But before champagne's gone warm and flat, glitter to dust, squinted eyes at the new year sun, let's prime the engine and take it out for another magic trip. We spent the last year jamming ideas in a tiny room and can't wait to share them with you. The band made up of Patrick Stump, Pete Wentz, and Joe Torman, and Andy Hurl hinted that fans won't have too long to wait. They added, quote, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for working the beat. Spoiler alert. We got more than a gold watch coming for you next year. Back in November, the Centuries Rockers took out an advert in the Chicago Tribune newspaper teasing their upcoming yet unannounced 8th album. The ad on a black background and read FOB 8, followed by the words, if you build it, they will come. Meanwhile, last week, the group appeared to share a preview of a song in a new video titled A Claymation Fall Out Boy Celebration. That's very witty. Alongside 2 postcards, 2 websites launched, with one dubbed, quote, sending my love from Pink Seashell Beach, and the other sending my love from the other side. It also goes on to say that in September, the Fall Out Boy guitarist Joe admitted while the band has worked on some new guitar-based material, he wasn't sure if they would end up going in that direction, which is a pretty common thing. When there's a new album in the works, a lot of times you're not going to know exactly the direction you're going in until you kind of get there. There's a lot of material, even a lot of songs that when artists are recording, they just don't end up using. I think a good example of that is Nickelback. They have a ton of stuff at what they call in their vault that wasn't ready for whatever album they were working on at the time. A good example of that is their most recent album that they just came out with in November, Get Rolling, which is Nickelback's 10th album, I believe. They have a song in there that's called Does Heaven Even Know You're Missing? And that song, Chad Kroeger had been sitting on for about 12 years. And I believe he was working on that song originally in the No Fixed Address album. I could be wrong. And pulled it out for this newest album that they just released, their 10th studio album, Get Rolling. And it's actually... it does sound like their older stuff a little bit, and you can kind of hear that, but with a little bit newer spin on it. But anyways, my point is, a lot of artists will do this, where they are working on an album. They'll lay down a lot of different songs and tracks and kind of styles of music, and they might completely change that because maybe their producer thinks they should go a different direction, or the band just feels like they want to make it heavier, or maybe make it a little more pop and a little bit more relatable to the masses. It just kind of all depends. But anyways, he goes on to say, he explained, I don't know what's happening with it. I think, unfortunately, went to the back burner. So, like I said, again, a lot of music and a lot of ideas you work on while you're in the studio sometimes just get scratched or put on the back burner, as he said. Goes on to say, it would be nice to make a record where the guitar is a little more upfront. We did start that way as a guitar-based rock band, and it would be cool to go back to those roots. We would have to find a way to do that doesn't sound like Fall Out Boy from 2005. It might be cool for somebody else to do that, but it wouldn't be cool for us to do it. So a little bit reminiscing of their olden days and saying, it'd be nice if we could go back to the roots of, how Fall Out Boy sounded, which for those that are familiar with the band, yeah, they were very rock heavy band, uh, a very rock heavy group, and they, you can hear it in their music. And I remember listening to them when I first discovered them when I was younger, and I was like, oh yeah, these guys are cool. And that was the music I actually really preferred. Not that I don't like their new stuff, I do like their new stuff as well. It's really catchy, but it's less of their rock and roll kind of roots as they mentioned. So it would be nice to see him maybe go back to that a little bit, but it doesn't sound like this album is going to take that direction. So I guess we'll just have to sit tight and find out what Fall Out Boy chooses to do with their eighth studio album. And hopefully, we're all happy with it and it doesn't just sound too poppy. But I mean, their last album was definitely more in the mainstream kind of pop music with some rock characteristics, is kind of the best way I can explain it. Another good example of that is, uh, I would like to say, Imagine Dragons. They kind of were a little bit more rock heavy too when they started out, and then kind of went more of like a kind of a pop rock direction where it was more towards the mainstream and what was popular at the time, and the type of characteristics and the type of uh, mixing and instrumentation that are appealing to the masses in the day that we live in, especially in America. So I am curious to see how this album turns out. I've been a fan of Fall Out Boy, like I said, for a while, so I'm excited to see how that turns out. So moving on from Fall Out Boy, this one's kind of more of a somber headline, and it even goes back the music that is um, connected to this article is even older, 70s. And that is Earth, Wind, and Fire's Fred White, unfortunately, has passed away. He passed away at the age of 67. And as you can understand, Fred's family is very devastated, and all of his fans. And like I said, a very somber situation. So let's just go through this. It says a musician passed away on Sunday, January 1st of 2023, which in its own, that's kind of crazy that he passed away on the first day of this year. I know a lot of us were looking forward to 2023, and we're hoping, we wouldn't lose a lot of good musicians and hopefully have some good things in store. And then the first day of 2023, we lose Fred White, which is it's a pretty big deal. It says that he passed away on the 1st of January in 2023 with his brother, Verdine White, announcing the news via a statement on social media. Alongside images of Fred playing the drums, Verdine wrote on Instagram, "Dearest family, friends, and fans. Our family is saddened today with the loss of another amazing and talented family member, our beloved brother Frederick Eugene Freddie White." And it has some emojis, is what it says after that. Verdine said that his brother will join Earth, Wind, and Fire star Maurice White, lead vocalist Roland Brustita, and former manager Monty Keith White in heaven. That's kind of amazing that so many of them actually have passed away, and that's a sad notion. He continued to say, he wrote, "He joins our brothers Maurice, Monty, and Ronald in heaven and is now drumming with the angels. Child prodigy, member of the EWF Original 9, with gold records at the young age of 16 years old. He was brother number 4 in the family lineup. But more than that, at home and beyond, he was a wonderful bro and was always entertaining and delightful, mischievous, and we could always count on him to make a seemingly bad situation more lighthearted." That's awesome. Verdine added, He will live in our hearts forever. Rest in power, beloved Freddie. We thank you for all your love, blessings, and support at this time. Soar high, baby bro. We love you to the shining and back. And there was a lot of people that, obviously paid their respects to Freddie, Freddie White. And, obviously that's a big blow to the family. I've always loved the music by Earth, Wind, and Fire. And, I've played their music in performances with bands. Just kind of pull it out as a random song. And, I can't remember a time when people did not enjoy their music. Like, even if it's just a random cover that we did, everyone knew the music. They would sing along, dance. It's just, funky and, like, just would make you want to dance and get into it. And it's very sad to hear this news. He goes on to say, he wrote on the photo sharing platform, sending my love and deepest condolences to you and the family. I have been blessed to be in his presence and blessed to have been influenced by him. A true king. Rest in power. And that's the end of that article. So, yeah, not a super long one, but it does talk about, a legend, a true legend passing away, a percussionist and drummer, a brother, and just a skilled musician passing away. And, 67 is, it's not young, but it's also not old. It's, the average, depending on what country you live in, that could be relatively young. So, it is sad to hear. And we'll move on to our last article that we'll be going over just for today's episode, and that is, let's scroll up here, it's David Lee Roth. Working with Eddie Van Halen was better than any love affair. So, David Lee Roth says working with Eddie Van Halen was, quote, better than any love affair that he could have had, which I think is kind of funny way to put that, but, to each your own, because they had their own issues, but, maybe you start to reconsider the relationships you had with people in life, especially once they pass away, and the opportunities you had to make, especially great music with another great musician, even if you don't personality-wise really click with that person super well, or musically you just kind of disagree on a couple things, performance aspect or songwriting or whatever it may be. But moving on, it says, although the pair often clashed during their time together in Van Halen, Roth revealed how much he misses his late bandmate, who died in 2020. Speaking on The Roth Show, he said, my dear departed Ed, boy, I miss him. I had a ball with Ed. Walt Disney once said, you know what? My love affair with Mickey Mouse was better than any love affair with a woman I ever had. I've gotten to tell you, playing with Eddie, writing songs with Ed, presenting those songs with Ed was better than any love affair I ever had. Well, there you go. He's saying he said love affairs, but anyways. He goes on to say, and some of those songs, I think, might last forever, or until the last syllable of time. Like Shakespeare said, they became anthems. Where are they playing Jump right now? Question mark. Roth, who played in Van Halen in 2015, also gave an insight into creating the song Jump. He said, I remember when he played Jump on the keyboards downstairs. I said, no. Well, we reflect the times. And the times at that time was guitars, guitars, guitars. And Jump was one of those hybrids. Meanwhile, it was recently revealed that Eddie recorded guitar parts for a planned Chris Cornell collaboration. One of the late Soundgarden frontman's former collaborators, Pete Thorne, who toured with Cornell and played guitar on some of the songs from his 2009 album Scream, claimed the two rockers came close to working together on a track, which is actually pretty cool. I'm a big fan of Soundgarden and Chris Cornell, and that would have actually been really cool if David Lee Roth ended up doing some music with Chris Cornell and Soundgarden. It goes on to say, appearing on the Mitch Laughlin and Jerry White show podcast, he said, they were buddies. Eddie always wanted to do something with Chris musically. He loved his voice and used to be like, man, I love him. We were always talking about doing something together. During the Scream sessions, Thorne helped produce versions of Long Gone and the title track, and it was at this point Cornell thought about getting Van Halen to join them. He added, Cornell and I in a parking lot listening to them in the car. I remember, and he looked at me and said, hey, what do you think if we got Eddie to work on this? Cornell tragically took his own life at the age of 52 in May 2017. And that's the end of that article. I think that would have been pretty legendary. I think pretty epic to have them to Eddie to work on music with Chris Cornell. I think they could have made some great music together. And unfortunately, Chris Cornell took his own life, and very tragic. When I first heard the news, it was kind of a pretty upsetting. I mean, everyone loved, Chris from Soundgarden, and he had a very iconic voice. And if you haven't heard music from Soundgarden, I you should go listen to it and find, music that it just isn't the hits, but just, the deep tracks of the albums. And such an iconic 90s rock, grunge rock voice that, we don't really hear very much nowadays, and help define the genre and music that we listen to now today, and where a lot of heavier music has come from as well. And I think it would have been amazing to have Eddie be a part of that as well. I think they could have written some amazing tracks or amazing pieces of music and songs, and I think they would have been so rocking. So unfortunately, that's something we'll have to just dream about and, think about the possibility that we could have had something like that, but unfortunately, that's not the case. But we can dream, and, it doesn't mean there isn't going to be great music still coming out. There's some great artists that, are still making music, but it's hard when you lose these legendary artists that, gave so much to just music and so much to, our lives. But anyways, with that, I just want to close this podcast, and I just thank everyone that's listened and enjoyed this episode. I'm going to be doing episodes every Friday, so stick around till next week, and hopefully you guys are having a great time, and I'll catch you next time. Keep rocking on.